Welcome to the Eat Y'all podcast, where we discuss the struggles and successes of the farmers, food producers, and chefs who are working to get better ingredients into restaurants today and to ensure their availability in the future.
Thanks to the Dairy Alliance, a network of hundreds of family dairy farmers, for their support of this episode of the Eat Y'all podcast. Want to know more about how dairy foods are harvested and crafted? Learn more at thedairyalliance.com. That's thedairyalliance.com.
Welcome to the Eat Y'all podcast. I'm your host, Andy Chapman. Once again, joined by Mariana Chapman. She just keeps showing back up for work, so we keep having her on.
Thanks for having me. I'm so glad to be here.
Well, look, we did a lot of talking about beef the last couple of episodes. We're still around the cows, but let's talk about cheese.
I love cheese, but even more than that, I really love knowing where my food comes from and understanding the nutrition of what I'm eating. I think, gosh, Andy, that's more important than ever before now. With COVID and everything that's happened, I think it's really raised a lot of awareness about, we are what we eat. And I think the farmer in this episode actually says that about his cows.
Yep. I think y'all are going to really like this episode. First of all, it's some of the greatest folks in the state of Kentucky that I get to visit with. I mean, tremendous folks.
Like Paco Garcia and Clara and Ronnie Patton, right?
Right. Wildcat mountain cheese. And I have to say, it was one of my favorite days of 2020. Went down to the farm with my dear friend Paco. We drove down from Lexington about an hour to the Patton's farm. And it was just an amazing visit with folks who love making cheese and cheese that tastes good and is good for you. And of course, me and Paco love eating cheese. So that was great. Anytime you get to hang out with an award-winning chef who's just an amazing guy that's so talented and so full of joy, it's awesome.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Getting to hang out with a chef like Paco and eating some good food all day. I bet that was a pretty good time.
Yeah, and I think just to set up the beginning of this interview, we're going to get 4 or 5 minutes with me and Ronnie and Paco, and he literally jumps into talking about the third cutting of hay. So he literally says the hay is what makes this cheese, and that's the way it's kind of got clipped. So when you hear that, we are standing on this beautiful hillside in Kentucky with fresh cut hay that just smells so good. Y'all ready to dive in?
Let's do it. Here is Andy's conversation with Chef Paco Garcia and farmer Ronnie Patton on his dairy farm at Wildcat Mountain Cheese in Kentucky.
You said
how can
third
you tell
cutting.
it's good?
Third cutting. What does that mean? Explain that to
Third cutting would be higher. It's not cellulose. It's not made into the stem. It's more sugars, and it would be more. It had frosted on this before I cut it, so the sugars were there. And like I said, I mean, it's just more part of the softness of it. Mm-hmm. And just cow would eat, just to eat that more. That would just. I just love the smell of that.
It's amazing how you have your passion even for like the grass that they eat.
Because it makes cheese.
So it makes cheese.
It makes cheese. You're holding the beginnings of cheese.
Ooh, that makes sense. Yeah, completely.
That's the start of the cheese.
The start of the cheese.
Yeah.
You become what you eat. So
you become what you eat, and that's the.
So if you had a bunch of, like onion tops and real just nasty weed, whatever, that would affect your.
Yeah. So we'd have to name. I don't know what we'd name it cheese, but it would come out in. Yeah, I can affect the flavor of the cheese more here, than she can in the plant.
That makes sense.
And that was coming with her food science background. Mm-hmm. I would bring from a friend of mine down in Tennessee had a cheese plant, and I would bring cheese home one day. We'd be in here, Clara. Well, he's feeding too much alfalfa, or he's got too much of this in her. I can't taste it. Just eat it. It's good. Yeah, it's good. Just eat it. But nobody's this. I can taste. I can't taste it. So, I mean, it's smart. I mean, it's just, but...
Especially like right now, you go to buy cheese and it really don't taste like anything.
It doesn't.
And like, I really appreciate, you sharing this because like a lot of people right now is like, I would say afraid, scared to even, like eat meat or like they stop eating like cheese because like they know, like a lot of diseases comes out of like.
Yeah. And cheese is, it's, it's not, a lot of people say they can't eat it because of lactose intolerance, but it's not it, because all the sugars goes out into the whey, which we take the whey and either put it back. I got a cousin got some hogs, we may feed it to them, or we put it back on the ground as fertilizer. So, we're full circle. We're coming back and just keeping everything going.
Yeah, like aged cheeses like Parmesan stuff have almost zero lactose at all anyway. I mean,
they're gone out.
Like 99.9.
Yeah.
So
the cheese that our oldest cheese we make is an aged cheddar. We age at least for a year. I think right now we're on 1.5 to 2 years. Called Somerset. It's a cheddar. It's a white cheddar, and it was because cheddar was made in Somerset, England. That's where it was developed. Clara and I met in Somerset, Kentucky.
Okay.
And the first cheese we made the first night in the cheese plant was a cheddar. So we call it Somerset. And so that's why I come up with Somerset with it.
I'll be so happy just to eating that cheese here in the summer. Just like Somerset.
Yeah, but but a little story that, we got our approvals to make on a Friday from the state, everybody, the labs and the health department. And Clark said, well, when you want to make cheese? I said, well, the farmer's market is open tomorrow. Let's make it like today. It's like 2:30 in the afternoon. I said, okay. So 4 o'clock, I go to the dairy and I pick up the milk and I bring it over to them. I've watched Mike Rowe on television. This ain't gonna take all night. 2:30 in the morning, I'm standing there stirring them curds and going, what in the crap have I got myself into? 4 o'clock later in the morning, we walk out with a batch of cheese made. She took, I think, about 20, 25 pounds of the curds we'd made, because that's what we made, and took those to the farmer's market and sold them. And we've been off and running ever since. So
that's a beautiful story.
Yeah.
Yeah. You ready to go taste some?
I'm excited.
Let's go eat some cheese.
And that just about nails it. Paco and Ronnie really get down to the brass tacks, don't they? I mean, you're only as good as the ingredients you eat. I mean, it makes sense if you put bad gas in a car, it's not going to run well.
And that's the trend we're really seeing with chefs and consumers alike. They're talking about it so much. Chefs want to start with the best ingredients possible and know where it comes from. I mean, Andy, they're accountable to their customers, and they want to be ready to give them answers about where that food comes from and where that flavor comes from that they're serving on the dish.
And what a great story about the all-nighter that started them down the cheese road. And we are not a comedy podcast, but what's about to happen when we sit down and taste through the cheese in the next segment that comes up? Ronnie, Clara, and Paco are so much fun. And it's just, it could be a TV show. It's a blast. Y'all are going to enjoy this.
I really hate I didn't get to make this trip with you, but let's dive back in to hear the backstories and hear you taste through the cheese line at Wildcat Mountain Cheese right now.
I was going to say live, but we are alive. This is pre-recorded in a non-undisclosed location, which means one of the Patton family, Ronnie or Clara, is going to tell us where we are in Kentucky. And then they point at each other.
We are in southeastern Kentucky.
Southeastern
Kentucky, in the edge of the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains. We're about 40 miles up 75 from the Tennessee border. We're about 80 miles south of Lexington and about 140 or 50 from Louisville. So I think we refer to it as God's country.
There you go. In God's country, Kentucky. And I can tell you, it was a beautiful drive down here from Lexington, and it was about 80 miles. Did it. It's great to be here. So look, we've been out riding around with Ronnie. We saw some various things around the farm and saw the girls, met Katie and some of her friends, and Paco shared some stories about that we'll get into later in more detail. So let's taste some cheese. You guys been making cheese here for how many years?
6 years.
6 years. We've got how many cheeses out here?
7 different cheeses for tasting today.
7 different cheeses. How many different? If y'all made a ton, y'all probably made all sorts of different flavors and things, just kind of one-offs, right? Or
probably about 12 to 14 different flavors altogether. Maybe add in a few more that was trials and didn't pass the test.
Yeah. Sometimes that happens in the kitchen, right?
Yes, a lot.
Do you have to eat your mistakes?
That's the good part. I have to eat my mistakes. That's definitely something that I enjoy a lot. I wonder how many trials do you have to come to do the Somerset. I'm really excited to try that one.
I've told him the story about Somerset, how we met, how the first cheese was made. and nothing but cheddar in Somerset.
Okay. So we aged that one for at least a year. It's a white cheddar, aged for at least a year to sharpen and develop its flavors to be known as Somerset.
Was that like the first one? Like the first try is like, oh, this is it? Or do you have to do it another year and be like waiting for another year?
No, not really. Not on the Somerset. It aged cheddar. Cheddar just gets better with the age. The hard part was getting some that was a year old, because as soon as we started getting cheese ready for the market, after about starting out at 2 months of age, people were buying it, so it was disappearing. So, Tom, we got enough inventory developed to put some back and save it for a year. So it did take us about 2 years before we actually had Somerset.
Somerset on the market. Ooh.
No, that's funny.
I'm just looking at Somerset and I'm like, I'm ready.
So we got Somerset, Italian Curves, Pioneer Coffee Rub, Gouda, Victory. What's the one up there on your top left?
Garlic pepper.
Garlic pepper. I thought that said Gary Cooper, which I was going to be excited about too. I love Gary Cooper.
He recommends that cheese.
And jalapeno cheddar. So where do we start, Claire?
I'd recommend that you start with the milder one, and then like the Gouda. Actually, it's pronounced Gouda. It's a Dutch origin cheese. And that's how they would say it.
No, I learned something. I was like, Gouda.
The G is sort of silent, and it sort of takes on maybe a slight H sound, so it's pronounced Gouda. Yeah,
I didn't tell that story.
In the Netherlands.
We were at the Knoxville market one week, and the guy steps up to the counter, and Clara says, "Hello, would you like to try some of my Gouda?" And he says, "Gouda." Clara said, "No, I got plenty." And he says, "Look, I'm from the Netherlands. It's pronounced Gouda." He and his wife had came over to Knoxville to see Willie Nelson in concert. Flew all the way across the Atlantic to do that. He took some of it back to the Netherlands with him. So,
there you go.
But it was funny. He said, "Gouda." She said, "No, I have plenty."
And that is why Ronnie's on the podcast right there for anecdotes just like that. Keep us rolling. All right. How do we want to do this? We got to shake a toothpick out for Paco. And I mean, there you go.
Thank you. I just want to say that I really appreciate this. Like,
we appreciate you having you.
All of this is culture for me. Like, first time.
We're glad to have you all.
The Gouda is a Dutch origin cheese.
I thought you said it was Gouda.
Yeah. Well, we're Kentuckians. We like to slaughter the language.
Mm-hmm.
Which this is a mild Gouda. It's a nice sandwich cheese. It melts nicely. It's used often in cooking. Maybe macaroni and cheese.
That's what I was thinking. Mac and cheese right there.
Garlic, cheese grits.
Wow. So good. Like, starts sharp, then it goes like smooth, and I can taste love right there.
You can taste love.
Wow.
We can wrap it up. This has been the Eat Y'all podcast. All right. Man. Yeah, I mean, that makes me think of mac and cheese. Like Gouda plus cheddar on the top, kind of under like the salamander or whatever, like crunchy cheddar toasted on top of that.
I think that cheese would go good with a little honey too. Sometimes.
You got honey
just
out here?
drizzles honey on top of it.
You got honey out here?
You got honey out here? We're out.
Yeah. We're out of honey.
Honey, we're out of honey.
Where do you head from here?
Anybody's game, because all of these are flavorful. So go maybe with the Somerset before we get into the other different flavors.
All right.
Which the Somerset is.
I kind of want to leave the Somerset for
Paco's wanting to wait on that.
He wants to wait. Okay.
I want to go. I was craving a cup of coffee on the way down here.
Try the Pioneer. It is called Pioneer Coffee Rub. It's the yellow cheddar base with the rub called coffee rub on it. Got a little, should have a little bit of sharpness with the cheddar, and then you get a hint of coffee and maybe a few other flavors. Has a little paprika, a little chili.
I can see that.
In it.
I think it's more to me as a dessert cheese. I may be wrong. Of course, I just milk cows, guys.
When you said dessert, I mean, I think about, going to a nice restaurant, you get coffee after your meal, which I had to stop drinking coffee after 4 o'clock, but be up all night. I guess now you get decaf. And it's kind of got almost like it's a light buttery flavor to it, What is Paco's tasting notes on this one?
I like the sweetness. When you first try it, like, you can tell, like, if you say coffee, I can taste coffee.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's a little sweet on the middle. On the very last, it's just like, it just wraps you with all the flavor. Like, so good. Like, wow. Like, in a little piece of cheese, like, it's just like a lot of, like, intense flavors. It's just incredible. Now I agree with what you were saying about the grass. Like, like everything starts with the grass. Yeah. Like, it's just pure love of like what you do. Like, it shows on like the cheese that you all make.
Yeah, Ronnie was pulling a big pile of. You were testing a row of
third cutting.
Yeah, man, that stuff was beautiful. So, what would you cheese board that, Paco? Would you?
I mean, that one I would just like serve it like you were saying on a dessert, like a cup of coffee, and okay, here is some piece of cheese. Try it with your coffee. Like, so simple. It would like, you want to preserve the flavors. But I will also do like French toast with some like syrup of coffee, just kind of like intensifying the flavors. And I actually had a French toast in my menu. So I will just sprinkle that cheese on top and,
Oh, man. Kind of grate some of that on top of your hot French toast so it kind of...
Oh,
make it pop.
Oh, you get like our son Andrew, which I think will never get married because he's such a good cook. Other night he made fried cornbread for supper, and I went to town later delivery or something. Come back and I had that. And I took some butter and melted the butter in the microwave and just poured it over that fried cornbread, and that's all I had for supper. It was just sweet tea and cornbread and butter.
Sounds really, really good. I think I could go for that.
I could have handled a little cheese shredded on top of that too.
Absolutely.
I never thought about that. But
probably some of that Somerset would have been good. I also think I would. I mean, I'd have to try it and see if it worked. But the Pioneer coffee rubbed. Sometimes I take squares about this size, and I put them on my flat top griddle, and I cook them down and turn them in. Almost into like a homemade Cheez-It.
Yeah.
And I bet this would be, I bet it would, with the coffee and all the spice rubbed on the outside, I bet that would be phenomenal. Taking it, like just crunching, making it into a little crunchy little chip.
Could you then take it maybe and put it on a salad?
I've actually made croutons.
Like yeah.
Just like that, for sure. All right, Paco, spin the wheel. Where are you going next?
Let's do the Victory.
The Victory.
Yeah, I wonder why you guys name it Victory. Like, what do you guys came up with that name?
Well, the Victory, the name just came to me somehow or another, which we do have a community over here called Victory.
Okay.
Just a few miles over. But at the time, I think I was reading the history of Camp Wildcat. And, of course, the Union was victorious over the South during that battle. And, of course, there was a victory there at the battle. So the name just came to me. So
this is the community cheese.
A nearby community, yes.
What all in that cheese?
The Victory is a white cheddar base. We soak it in craft beer, a Kentucky craft beer. And then we do which is basically has been Alltech Ale.
Okay.
Alltech gets their bottle or their barrels again. Some of their barrels come from a cooperage, which is 3 miles up the road here. which in turn I get my sawdust to bed, my freestyles back. So we're coming full circle again.
After the soaking craft beer, the spice rub, nutmeg and ginger, cinnamon, celery seed, and
that secret ingredient.
Caraway.
Caraway.
That's the one you're really tasting at the end, if you get a caraway seed on your piece. That one also has a little bit of age on it. That particular sample, I think about 1 year and 9 months. So
that's very interesting, and it's got, the finish on it, like that flavor just kind of holds and holds. I'm anxious for Paco's tasting notes on this. He's going to try one more.
It's very complex.
There's a lot going on. When you said ginger and all those things, I didn't taste like a pronounced ginger.
No.
But then once you said it, I was like, oh yeah, okay. I remember that and several other things going on.
Ginger, celery seed, nutmeg, and caraway.
What is caraway used for?
Rye bread.
Rye bread. Oh, that totally makes sense, because now I'm thinking about what is that? The corned beef sandwich.
Reuben.
Yeah. That's exactly what
Yeah. It's almost like having a piece of rye bread and cheese all in the same sample.
I definitely can taste the cheddar, and it's just like, that's like the first flavor that comes to my mind. And then it's just, after that, it's just very complex. Like, all the flavors are just together, and it's like the mole, like the salsa mole. Like, we do, like, every time I do mole, I put like 20 ingredients. The goal for mole is to not only like have like one single flavor that is just like, is gonna taste the most. Like you were saying, like ginger, but I don't like ginger comes like involved with all other flavors. So that's just like what you did there on this cheese is just, it's very balanced. Like, it's just like you create like a unique flavor. Like, I cannot even explain it. Like,
well, so I think what you're basically describing is you're it's almost like you take all these different colors and you put them together and you create a brand new color.
Yes,
that is, it's part red, it's part blue, it's part yellow, or whatever. But at the end of the day, you can name that new color something totally different because you created a new thing, and it's not just like, okay, well, this, like the one that's coffee rubbed, it's still pronouncedly coffee. So it's really interesting. All right, I want to go Italian here. You feel like we can go Italian next?
Let's go Italian.
Those are fresh curds.
When did you make these?
These are last week's make. Last Thursday we made.
Curds last Thursday,
yeah.
Yes. So they're about a week old. So
how long? What's the shelf life on a curd?
30 days is a lot of restaurants.
It depends upon what stage you're looking for in the curds. A lot of people, especially the northerners, where they've had a plethora of fresh curds and abundance there, they like to get them right out of the vat, and they'll have that squeak to them. It's basically green squeaky cheese where it's not developed a flavor. After each day, the flavor changes a little bit. The texture also changes. The texture starts to soften a little bit because they want to become cheddar, but they're not going to because most of the time they're consumed way before they have the opportunity to age and develop the cheddar flavors. But yet each day that texture will soften a little bit. The flavor, you'll have different flavor profile from day to day on those curds, it seems like. As far as the shelf life, I think normal refrigeration, about 28 to 30 days generally.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's really good. So what all herbs are in that? Obviously, I've tasted some rosemary and...
It's an Italian herb mix. The herb mix that I use doesn't really tell me exactly what's in it.
Gotcha. It looks good.
Yeah, it looks good. I will definitely use it on a quesadilla. It tastes like Oaxaca cheese.
Oaxaca cheese.
Moist, a little bit salty.
Oh, yeah. Ronnie, we got 3 left. We're going to save in the Somerset. You pick one here.
Let's go to the garlic pepper.
Garlic pepper, the Gary Cooper. Is that
the Gary Cooper.
One of my favorite movies ever was Sergeant York. I would watch it. If it was playing right now, I'd stop and watch it again. Such a great movie.
Yeah. What's your favorite cheese from all of them?
Mine is that one. Is the garlic pepper.
Garlic pepper.
I noticed that when Andy asked my cheese you want to taste, Ronnie was pointing it. Clara was like, "Oh, I know which one is she was like,
I like to get age on it also. If you get some age on it.
Yeah, this one's still relatively young, so the flavors haven't totally melded and developed the way they probably should. Again, we've had high demand for that one, so it's being pushed out a little bit. But even at a young age, it's still got pops that garlic flavor and that pepper pretty
and it's
well.
Not real garlic. It's not real peppery either.
No. Where it's a rub on the outside, the seasoning is. As it ages, it infiltrates the cheese.
So it's stronger on the outside. And we're seeing all these for our podcast listeners. Everything we're trying is in little, like almost the size of I'm thinking of a Chex Mix, bite of
bites,
1-inch square sort of thing. But you guys are making these in what size wheels? 8-pound wheels, 6 pounds?
20-pound blocks.
20-pound blocks.
Mm-hmm.
So when you rub the outside of this particular one with garlic pepper seasoning, I mean, you're not mixing it in the whole middle of the block. So it's an outside thing. And
it's outside, and it infiltrates as it ages, infuses inside.
What's the furthest distance to the middle of the cheese blocks from the outside with the size you're making?
They're about 4 inches in height, 3.5 to 4 inches in height.
So you're never more than 2 inches away from the outside.
Exactly. Right.
Because that would make a difference too.
Yeah. Yeah, you're still getting a lot of the cheese flavor and quality, and then you get that pop of flavor in with it. Garlic pepper, just we like it on hamburgers a lot. We have a restaurant that is using it for a garlic pepper, a GPC sandwich, they call it. It's a garlic pepper cheese. It's basically a grilled cheese, and they add in, I think, tomato and bacon, you said?
Free-range bacon or something. Mm-hmm. I like it in the summertime with fresh garden tomatoes.
Mm-hmm. Oh, man.
Get you some Italian bread or something. And
you don't have any tomatoes around here, do you?
Yes. Right here.
We have a few, yes.
Yeah.
At the house, out of the garden.
It has been a slim year for tomatoes at our house, so
it's been a good year for us, hasn't it?
I have a tomato deficit.
Yeah, we had better tomatoes this year than we did.
Now, wait a minute. You eat tomatoes. We eat maters.
Well, we call them that. I was trying to be cultured.
Okay. Maters.
I was trying to act dignified.
Maters and taters.
We don't. We did some sweet. We have the sweet potato capital of the world in Mississippi, and catfish capital of the world. So, all right. Next up is going to be the jalapeno cheddar.
Ooh, okay.
I love spicy.
I love spicy. I love jalapeno.
And Clara cut like a pound of this for us to try, so we're really going to have to.
Actually, you got 2 different makes there.
Yeah, this is her newest cheese out, I guess, isn't it?
Yeah, this is basically, we put it out last year in 2019, but this year it's been out a little bit more, and again, it's hard to keep up with production on that one.
Is it sell a lot?
We're selling all that we make, which is not as much as, we don't make as much of that as we do some of the other cheeses, but we probably could if we ramped up production on that one.
How often do you come with new cheeses?
Now, maybe once a year or every 2 years.
Okay.
Not as much so now that we've got a pretty good range out there. The first few years, again, it was a lot of trial and error.
Throwing something at a wall and see if it sticks.
Right. And see what people like, get their feedback. And, you know, we'll maybe take a wheel at the end of a cheese run and try some different seasoning on it, the flavor, and see if we like it. If we like it, then we see if others like it. So it's kind of fun to play with new flavors.
So I also saw that you guys win some awards.
Yes.
For cheeses. So like, since you told me that you don't change the cheeses a lot, so like, are these some of the winners?
The curds are, not the Italian curds, but the curds are winners. The plain curds. The Somerset one year, I know the Swiss, which she does not have on the table here.
Yeah, the Swiss has won 2 years in the Alpine category. The garlic pepper, didn't it win the flavored cheese?
2 years ago it won. Yeah.
It won the flavored cheese 1 year. The garlic pepper did.
Yeah.
And I'm just looking over Clara's shoulder. I see like pimento cheese in the cabinet there, and several other different cheese curds, and I guess they didn't want us to eat 47 different types of cheese. We still have to probably have dinner at some point, but so y'all have got a wide variety of products available.
Yes. As we stated, I think a little bit ago, maybe around 12 to 14 different flavors or varieties. Some of the things like the pimento and the fromage and the ricotta, those are made in very small amounts, and we only keep those here or take them out with the farmer's market with us. Those items, being fresh cheeses, usually have very short shelf life, so we don't really put those out on the web page for shipping or anything like that.
Gotcha. All right, Paco. Somerset time.
About time.
Or did you get both of those?
We have to try it.
The difference?
I like how spicy the jalapeno.
All right, so
The jalapeno cheddar is.
what do you use to? I mean, is there just like a spice blend that has the jalapeno stuff that you're buying, or are you actually getting jalapenos raw and chopping them and dicing them and slicing them? Like what?
We're using a dried peppers. I use both jalapeno and the crushed red pepper. Both those are dried. Those are just mixed and added into the curd and incorporated into the block, the hoop. And as it ages, it develops more flavor. To really set that cheese off, too, on appearance, we do a paprika rub on the outside. So when you cut it and you've got the little bits of red and green from the jalapeno and the red pepper, and then that red outside looks like a crust, but it's not crusty.
Yeah. Ronnie's going back in just to double check, make sure it still tastes the same. Wow.
I will put this on a quesadilla.
Oh, yeah.
Quesadilla, or I'm working on a mollete recipe, so like just put it on the salamander just like this.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. The first one you had was a little bit more aged and probably a little bit more pop on that pepper flavor than this one right here. And sometimes being around the edge cut, which that was sort of an edge piece, the flavor maybe didn't infiltrate quite as much. But given the age on the first one that you had, the flavor was a little bit more developed.
Mm-hmm. What's funny?
Which one did you like the most? Like the first one?
I think I like the first one. The first side I got had more punch, more spice to it, and more. I do like. I mean, I don't have there's not a bad aged cheese, but I find that I like some of the older, more interesting cheddars and things that have gotten a little age on them and smoked good. You know, those things that just have a little bit more complex flavors going on. And that first one I felt like was doing that. Ronnie's trying that one with the green rind. Oh, that's an apple. My bad.
This is green cheese.
Green cheese. All right, you ready for the Somerset?
I've been ready
since he heard the story.
Since I heard the story.
Somerset. And these all are, you're making these in 20-pound blocks?
20-pound hoops, yes.
20-pound hoops.
Yeah.
Well,
With their
Wilson
blocks.
molds.
Yeah. They're blocks.
I'm thinking of that. I'm trying to picture how big a 20-pound one is. I've seen the 5-pound Tillamook, so I guess it'd be 4 of them.
4 of those.
That's called math, what Ronnie just did there.
With his shoes on.
That's a real cheddar.
Just buttery and melty at the end there.
Rich.
To me, it has some unique flavors that you don't think in an aged cheese that you would get in a year-old cheddar. If that buttery and that, it doesn't have that real sharpness.
No.
The finish is buttery, yeah.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I'd put that in a grilled cheese, ham and cheese all day long. But it also, I think that's another fun one you could put on a cheese board and, have some funky blues or something, and also, just a fun, interesting cheddar.
Yeah. I would literally just take like a little bag of like squares of this cheese and just go and sit down and like watch the Somerset and eat it.
You could go
Yeah.
where we were a while ago
Yeah,
and
like-
eat the cheese.
Yeah, I've had people at market, they'll come back and they had tried the Somerset and they said, well, I sat down, I'd intended just to eat a little bit of it. And said they looked up and the whole package was gone.
Yeah, it's just like
Next thing you know,
yeah, it's just
and
you
that's
wanna
a
keep
6
eating.
or 8 ounce package that they would have purchased. So they eat practically the whole thing in one setting.
about half a pound of cheese. I did that with some pecans. I toasted some awesome South Georgia pecans, and I literally did a pound of them because that was the size package, and I was just toasting them using salted butter, and then I was finishing them with some sea salt. And I kept tasting them because I wanted them to be just dialed in just right. And then I was going to take that to some chefs that we were doing a thing with. By the next day, I had eaten almost every day because they were so good and the saltiness was just right to go, I'll have another.
Right.
I need to make it and vac seal it, make it harder to get my hands on it again. Paco's doing the pro move of doing it with his cracker.
You sell me with the story. Yeah, it's so good.
We actually have a saying for our cheese is that it's so good you don't need the crackers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I could totally see that.
Yeah.
Somerset.
And when you add everything changes by what's around us. When you put something up next to a salty cracker like that, I bet that Gouda on a salty cracker would change the dynamic of what's going on there. This visit to the farm of one of America's best artisan creameries is brought to you by the Dairy Alliance. You can learn more about the Dairy Alliance at thedairyalliance.com. You can find all sorts of resources about dairy nutrition info and farming info at their website, and we're happy to be partnering with them. Check them out at thedairyalliance.com. All right, so Clara and Ronnie and Paco, I want to thank all y'all for joining us here on the Eat Y'all podcast. I want to kind of we talked about your cheeses, and we've talked about, hopefully we got some good audio that y'all will have heard from Ronnie and Paco and myself as we're running around the farm and kind of checking things out. But I want to talk briefly about the impact of the pandemic and coronavirus and what has that changed or affected as far as your day-to-day operations, your sales, your customers, your processes you're doing. Like how's that affected y'all way up here in the hills of Kentucky?
Well, I think we've seen a bigger change in the way people are buying and procuring their foods. And a lot of folks are sourcing their foods a little bit more local if possible. And so we have seen some startups plus some changes in some retail operations where some of these smaller local stores are sourcing locals. And then with the change where people can do curbside pickup, they're placing their orders. So that has kind of created a little bit more demand for our local product in local retail stores.
Do you kind of see that continuing on, even just as people have gotten, okay, well, I've found new products that are here available locally. You feel like that's gonna continue to pull along, or do you think that's waning?
I think it will continue at least for a little while. We don't seem to be slowing down, not much on that, because making that jump from the summer season into the fall now, there's still a pretty good demand for it. And I think we'll continue to see that certainly through the next year as long as the pandemic wanes. But a lot of people will say, okay, I like this way of shopping. I'm getting good products. And it's quality, and it's maybe better than what I've had before. And then too, they're changing their habits. They're getting out of the habit of going to the grocery store. Let somebody else put together this for them. So
there you go.
So there's changes.
I think it's hurt the restaurants have really suffered. You really feel for the restaurants.
Yeah.
It's really hurt those. And if we ever get those back, I know around here a lot of, I think in London, our county seat here is London, I believe there's about 100 restaurants, but they're all chains. I don't think they've got about 3 or 4 that are independently owned. It's affected those type of restaurants where they go in, sit down, and eat, and they've been really the problem with, I think, with the pandemic for the restaurants.
For sure. All right. Well, I appreciate y'all sharing your story and your skills and talents with us on the plate here, and I want to thank Paco Garcia for coming up from Louisville, driving.
For inviting me.
He drove to Lexington to meet me so that he could then drive down here, and who knows, he may even have to get back to the restaurant tonight to cook. So we want to thank y'all, but we like to do something called the lightning round, and this won't take but another 45 minutes to an hour at the most. Clara's eyes just go like, what? No, lightning round. This is quick. This is fun. I'm going to ask each of you a series of questions, and you can answer with the first thing that comes to your head, unless it's profanity, and then try to edit yourself. So, all right, Ronnie, biscuits or cornbread?
Cornbread.
Yeah, all right. We figured he would. He already went. Clara, biscuits or cornbread?
Cornbread.
Biscuits.
Paco comes through with the biscuits.
I mean, they have gravy.
Yeah. There you go.
Actually, it depends upon whose they are sometimes.
Well, that is.
You answer that is Southern biscuits or cornbread. Now, they've been a toss-up.
Yeah, well, and I say that from the Mississippi context in which I live. But so I always kind of got to lean biscuits, but really good cornbread that's not a cake can be fantastic. Especially with jalapenos and some of this cheese flaked on top and all. There's lots of good ways to do that. All right. So, favorite cut of steak?
Filet mignon.
The filet mignon, he says.
Yeah. The filet mignon is what Boylan called it. And we were in 1979. We were national land judging team for the state. We went to Oklahoma, and we went out to a restaurant to eat that night. And the boy in a neighboring county was on the team, and he wanted a figlet biglet and a long neck Lone Star. So for now on, I call them filet mignon. I'll call them a figlet miglet.
That's hilarious. All right, Clara.
Probably go with the ribeye.
Ribeye.
I'll go with the ribeye too.
Paco's going ribeye too. All right, favorite barbecue. You got your choices are pulled pork, ribs, brisket, or chicken.
Pulled pork.
Pulled pork.
Yeah, pulled pork.
The pig wins. I can't win. Here we are in the middle of cow country, and we got pig. If you could eat a meal with any person, any 3 people, living or dead, and serve them this cheese, who would you hang out with?
Oh, I don't know. That's a tough one.
That is a tough question.
Yeah, I'd like to pass on that one.
Well, grade on the curve, so you're not going to fail.
Well, okay.
I mean, you can go.
I would say, if you're going to serve the cheese, I want to get somebody in the culinary line. So I'm going to go with what would Justin Wilson would be a good one.
You would have a story time.
Yeah, that would be one, and then I would say Martha Stewart.
There you go.
Yeah.
You get some stock tips while you're in there.
Yeah, you get
beef tips, stock tips, and
stock
some
tips.
cheese.
Yeah, well, beef tips with a side of stock tips.
Yeah, as long as you get them at the right time.
Right time. Probably, I don't know. I just to see if I could turn him over at Gordon Ramsay. I guess just to turn him on.
That's great. I actually have sat across the table from him at a meal.
Yeah.
He is a pistol.
I'd say he is.
All right, Clara.
Gordon Ramsay, when he mentioned that route, the culinary, Gordon Ramsay came to my mind. That would be a good one. So, and then I think, not matter, but I think it would probably be interesting to see what she would have to say. Maybe Ouida Mikkel, local chef in the Lexington area.
Queen back.
We had lunch at her place today, did we not, Paco?
We did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we
Which one of them, Honeywood?
Zim's
Cafe.
We've not been to Zim's.
No.
I will do any people.
Anybody, living or dead.
I think I will do my son and my girlfriend. Yeah.
You still have one more.
3 people. Anthony Bourdain.
Anthony. Yeah. Well, Tony, he's a good one. All right, Clara, you got one more or no? I got 2 more questions, so that's all we got.
Well, you said living or dead, which my mother has passed on, but she would appreciate good food, so I'd say my mother.
And she made great brownies.
Well, see, then you could get her to bring brownies to the dinner. That'd be perfect. Yeah. All right, Ronnie, the police call and tell Clara that you've been arrested. What does she think that you were arrested for?
It's uncanny. Whatever it is, I did do it.
He's not brought up on false charges.
No false charges. It's an actual charge. I don't know what she gets on to me about my driving sometimes. Maybe speeding. I can't keep my mouth shut after talking to the officer. Trying to argue my way out of it.
All right, well, we're going to flip the script. Clara's in the pen. What'd she do?
What did you do?
Or what does Ronnie think you did?
What does Ronnie think I did?
I can tell you what I did.
Clara sounds like she's so straight-laced that she can't even imagine committing a crime.
And it's not that. I could probably do things imaginable, but I can't think on the spot.
Well, now,
that's the rule-following health inspector.
Yeah, if I can go back, when she was at the dairy, when I told you about her being a lab supervisor at the dairy, the week we were getting married, she cut my dairy off over here for high bacteria counts. I've never wore the pants in this family, so she's been the boss since.
Just to clarify, Ronnie is wearing pants as we do this podcast, but he's not wearing.
They're Clara's pants, but I have pants.
He's not wearing the pants, but he is wearing pants.
Yeah, wearing Clara's pants.
People don't get the wrong idea. All right, Paco, we get the phone call.
Just driving reckless.
I'm not going to comment on that since we still have to drive home. All right, last one. We're a year from now. We've got a huge charger of champagne or a big case of beer, or whatever. We're celebrating a milestone. What are we celebrating a year from today that you guys have accomplished? Y'all can collaborate on this one.
Oh, I hope of course, today was the opening of Kentucky Cheese Scares. And I would hope that probably the success of that program, which in turn helps some of the hunger here in the state, kind of reduces that number.
That's great.
I would concur on that.
And recap, because I know that's one thing we really didn't talk about a ton, Ronnie, as we were running around the farm. Tell folks about Kentucky
Cheese Scares I was approached a couple of years ago by somebody from Feeding America about doing a project in Kentucky like was going on in Pennsylvania about using artisan cheese to help food banks and also help dairy farmers. It was a win-win situation. So we've been working for about 2 years to put this program together with the Department of Agriculture, other cheesemakers, which we had there today, which was Kenny of Kenny's Farmhouse Cheese and Bob and Angie Clean Foods of Harvest Homestead cheese. So we make our cheese available at select Kroger stores. And part of the proceeds from the sale of that cheese goes back to the food banks to buy food for the needy, which Michael Halligan, which was with God's Food Pantry, stated today that $1 worth, which would be 2 purchases of our cheeses, could provide them with 8 meals.
Wow.
Just seeing people go hungry is a problem for me, because I like to eat and I just don't want to see anybody go hungry.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a problem we've kind of kicked off, and I'd like to see it be successful.
Yeah, for sure. And it's one of the things that I've noticed that, food pantries oftentimes have, they'll get a lot of the starches and the carbs.
They don't get no dairy or protein.
But the protein and things like that really have a ton of nutrients and are really good for you. And this, it seems like that's the hardest thing to put in there.
And a pound of cheese is basically 2 pounds of 2 gallon milk, roughly, when that begins.
Pound cheese would be about a gallon and a half of milk.
And half of milk, and it's more shelf stable.
Yeah, for sure. All right, Mr. Garcia, a year from now, we're popping the champagne. Mm-hmm. What are we celebrating in your world?
Celebrating we overcome the pandemic. Everybody's just happy, grateful, and healthy around us.
There you go. Happy, grateful, and healthy, and we've survived the pandemic. I will toast to that for sure. Well, look, thank y'all all for joining us today, and thanks for sharing your farm, your cheese, and Paco, thank you for sharing your busy day with us and joining us on the Eat Y'all podcast.
And welcome you back anytime.
Well, we'll make it happen.
You've been listening to the Eat Y'all podcast, hosted by Eat Y'all founder and chief relationship officer, Andy Chapman. If you enjoyed this episode, it would mean the world to us if you'd join us in our mission to save family farms by subscribing and leaving a review. Even better, share this episode and follow us on your favorite social media account at Let's Eat Y'all.